Mark your own. Oh, we have good old Anne. All vectors have both magnitude and direction. A cannonball is fired horizontally from a cannon on top of a 25-meter high cliff. Horizontally is a key idea. That's going to make this the easiest question, but I have to have an aha moment first, Danica. Velocity of 80 meters per second, ignore air resistance. Looks like A wants me to find time and B wants me to find the range. But first, I'm going to dulp. Looks like we have a 25-meter high cliff, and it looks like we're launching it horizontally at 80 meters per second. If I make a t-table, I know AX is 0, I know AY is negative 9.8, and then for this question, it looks like VX is 80, it looks like dy is negative 25. Uh-oh, I only know two things. I need three things to find a fourth. What else do I know if I'm launching horizontally? What is Vy initial exactly as a number? 0, not 80. And the common mistake, kids put in 80. No. I understand why you want to say it's your initial velocity. It is, but it's your initial horizontal velocity. Your initial vertical velocity, right when you leave for a split second, you haven't started falling yet. And so I can find time this way. In fact, I think it's going to be d equals at squared over 2. VIT vanishes. And although this is a quadratic, this is an easier quadratic, I can get the t by itself. I don't have to use the quadratic formula. You could, and you get the right answer. I'm going to go t equals 2 times d over a square root. I'm going to get t equals 2 times negative 25 all over negative 9.8 square root. 2 times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8 square root, answer button. And I get 2.26 if I go to 3 sig figs. If you got that, I would give you 2 out of 2. If not, I would probably give you, I don't know. I suspect I'd give you a half mark if I saw that you knew that AX was 0 and AY was negative 9.8. I would probably give you a half mark if you had the aha, I know Vy initial is 0. I would give you a half mark if I saw that, and a half mark for the answer. B, how far does the ball travel horizontally? That's dx. What's the fancy word for dx? It starts with letter R. Okay, so I'll use that word, and that's what I'll expect you to know. I think I can go dx equals vxt plus, wait a minute. Do I need to write plus a half at squared? But again, Garrett, you can see how if you're absent-minded and you write that, you'll put that negative 9.8 into the horizontal, and I'll go cray-cray when I see that. It's a very easy mistake to make, though, very tempting to do. So it's going to be 80. I'm going to write 2.26, but you know I'm using my answer button. I get a range of 181 meters. If you got that, 2 out of 2. Otherwise, I would give you 1 mark if I saw that, half mark for the number, half mark for the answer. So if you got A wrong, but for part B, you went 80 times your answer from A, I would give you 2 out of 2 for part B because you did it totally right. Just started with the wrong data point. A projectile is launched at an angle. Did I say angle components? Oh, in fact, it's being pretty blatant. I'm going to have to dulp. So let's see. 58 degrees looks about like this. And it's 58 degrees above the horizontal. So that's Vx. That's Vy. I could do the trig, but I seem to recall there was a stupid gimmick Mr. Dewick came up with. Which trig function was Vy? Sine? Which trig function was Vx? Can you guess? Of course you can, right? So Vy is going to end up being 28 sine 58. 23.7. I will be fussy because this is an answer. If you didn't put units, I would take a half off. Vx is going to be 14.8. 1 mark for each of those. I will be asking you to find components of something on your test. What drives me a bit cray-cray, every year there's a kid who does this wonderfully, but they don't read the question carefully. They put Vy right here and Vx right there. And to me, that's a silly mistake, throwing away marks. And unfortunately, I kind of got to give you a goose egg because both answers are wrong. So don't do that. What's the maximum height that the projectile reaches? Now I'm going to need a t-table. I think I have room to do a t-table right here. X, Y, I know AX equals 0, AY equals negative 9.8. I wrote 23.7, and if you use that, fine. I'm going to write 23.745. Vy initial equals 23.745. Height is definitely vertical, but I only know 2 things. I need a third, so I can find. What's Vy final? Ah! At the top for a split second, it's 0. So I can find time. How? Let's see, for B, I'm going to use T equals Vf minus Vi over A, as long as all of those are vertical. It's going to be 0 minus 23.745 all over negative 9.8. If I'm really fussy and want to be really accurate, I could quickly go 28 sine 58. Now I've got Vy with all of its decimals back on my calculator, and I can use my answer button. So I can go 0 minus answer button divided by negative 9.8. And I get 2.42. I would take 2.41, 2.43, depending on what you rounded, what you used for your Vy initial. But if you used your answer button all the way through, you'd get that. But that's not what they wanted me to find. Wait a minute, Mr. Dewick. I'm finding time. That's not what they wanted. They wanted me to find height. Well, that was a waste. I can get straight there. I don't need to find time. I can go D equals Vf squared minus Vi squared all over 2A. Well, that would be even better, Mr. Dewick. 0 squared minus 23.7 squared. I don't know what I was doing there, folks. Sorry about that. I know what I was doing. I was looking at part C. Duh. Let's bring that back. What did I have? 28 sine 58. So I got that stored back on my calculator. It's going to be 0 squared minus answer button squared divided by 2 times negative 9.8. You had a maximum height of 28.8. I'd take 28.7 as well, or 28.9. It depends what you rounded to, but 28.8. If you got that, I would give you 2 out of 2 for part B. Otherwise, I would give you 1 mark if I saw that, half mark for the numbers, half mark for the answer. You could have used that time value that I found, that 2.3, to then go D equals VIT plus a half AT squared, and you'd get the same answer. C says, how long is the projectile in the air for? So they definitely want me to find time. I know VI is 23.7. VF is negative 23.7. You could let VY final be 0. That would find time to top and then double it. But I'm lazy. I'd rather get there in one step. I'd rather use the idea of what goes up must come down. Why not? I'm going to bring that 23.7 back on my calculator. 28 sine 58. And so I'm going to use T equals VF minus VI over A, making sure all of these are vertical. One common mistake, because kids can't figure out what VY final is, they'll let VY final be, oh, I don't know, they'll put the 14.8, they'll put, I need another velocity, I need something. It's the same as you left the ground at, but negative. So it's going to be negative answer minus answer divided by negative 9.8. No matter which way you found it, if you found time to top and then doubled it, or if you found it in one step like I did you all get 4.85 seconds? I would give you 1 mark for that, probably, and 1 mark for that. Before you turn the page, what else could I ask? I could ask for the range, and that would just be dx equals vxt. Which t? This t right here. What else could I ask? Oh, I could ask for v final at the top. What's v final at the top? No, if it was 0, it would be stopped, and it's not. What's v final vertical at the top? Say that what you just said. So what velocity is still left? V final at the top is 14.8 for a split second. I can tell that might be, in fact, that would be like a little 1 mark question because you don't need to do any work, but you have to have that aha moment so typically if you see a written question that's only worth 1, that's my way of saying you know the answer already. Think carefully. Okay. Number 3, 2 forces act upon a point Q east. Okay, I better draw compass rose. Force 1 is 5 due east. 12 due south. So for a properly labeled vector diagram, I would need to see an arrow labeled with a 5 pointing to the right. I would need to see an arrow labeled with a 12 pointing down. You could draw it this way, but I'm guessing most of you didn't. And then I would need to see the resultant. This is, I guess they wanted me to call it R. If you left that side blank, I'm not going to freak out, but I would need to see the hypotenuse drawn in. I think this one worked out dead even to 13, yes? It is the 5, 12, 13 triangle. I've memorized a few of them. So when you do the Pythagoras, you'll get 13 newtons. But wait a minute, force is a vector. I need a direction, much like your futures. Theta is going to go there. Color, 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 color. That 12, opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. What about the 5? Which trig function? It's going to be tan theta equals 12 over 5. Paige, how do I find an angle? Shift button or second function, whatever it's called on yours. Inverse tan. 12 divided by 5. I get 67.4 degrees. North of south, east of west, what of what? Is it south of east? Of east. The of blank is always the nice line. East, south of east. Yes, I agree. I would give you 1 mark for the magnitude, half mark for the theta, and a half mark for the what of what. Oh, number 4 has some teeth. I could tell just at a glance because I saw east and then an angle. This is a non-right angle triangle. I need to draw a compass rose because I've scrolled down. It says, what's the plane's ground speed? I think we're going to be using this concept. Engine speed plus wind speed equals ground speed. By the way, on your test, I would have no problem asking you to find wind speed or engine speed. Fine with that as well. Get one of those by itself, you might have to subtract a vector. But here, I think we're going to add them. So it looks like it's 220 due east, plus 80 meters per second north of east. North of what? North of what? North of what? I'm going to draw east first. I'm going to go 30 degrees north of that. So that 80 is at an angle. Did I say angle? I'm going to break this 80 up into its components. So I'm going to probably, well, no, I might be able to do this triangle right here. It looks like I have a Vx and a Vy. I'm not putting an initial on the Vy because this is not free fall, this is not gravity. In fact, we said for the boat going across the river and for the airplane, what can you assume A is? 0. I could stick a vector acceleration, and it's doable. It's just a pain and not really worth it. I think opposite hypotenuse. I think Vy ends up being 80 sine 30. I think Vy ends up being 40 exactly. Is that right? And Vx ends up being 80 cos 30. I have no idea what that is. 69.282. So I'm going to redulp. It looks like what I really have here is a 220, a 40 straight up, and a 69.282. How would I add those three vectors together? I wouldn't. You can't. What you can do is add two of them together, get an answer, and then add the third one. Which two would I add together if I was clever? Yeah, the ones that are in the same plane. Okay? So I can now say this is 289.282 plus 40. And now I have turned this, Zach, into a question. I know how to do, because how many vectors do I have now? How would I add them together? Draw them? You don't say. Let's see if I can fit it in right here. 289.282. 40. So I think the resultant, there's my ground speed. If you want me to find the magnitude of the ground speed, I'm going to use Pythagoras. It's going to be, you know what, Mr. Dewick, why don't you cleverly add 220, and now you've got that 289 as an answer button, and now you can go answer button squared plus 40 squared, square root. And I get a magnitude of 292 at theta, color, 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 opposite, adjacent. I think it's going to be tan theta equals 40 over 289.282. 40 over, oh, hang on, Mr. Dewick. Shift tan of 40 over 289.282. And I get 7.87, 7.9 degrees. I'll go 7.9 degrees. Change colors, Mr. Dewick. North of south, east of west, what of what? That's north of east. If you got that, I would give you 2 out of 2. Otherwise, so for the correctly labeled vector diagram, if I saw this first line, I would give you 1 mark, because that's the key. Then, for the rest of this, on your test, I would probably make this worth 7 marks, because it's got a large number of steps, but since I only made it worth 2, 1 mark for the magnitude, half mark for the angle, half mark for the what of what. The other way you could do this, by the way, if you're good at the sine law and the cosine law, you don't have to go components. You can actually add 220 to 80 tip to tail, where this is your resultant, which looks an awful lot like what I ended up with as my resultant too. The only problem is this angle here of 30 is not inside my triangle. I need that angle. How big is that angle? Okay, 150. And then you can find this using the cosine law. What does the cosine law say? V squared equals 220 squared plus 80 squared minus 2 times 220 times 80 cosine 150. It's Pythagoras with a fudge factor because it's no longer a right angled triangle. And then you could find theta using the sine law. I'll be honest, if I'm not doing answer keys for you, if all I care about is the answer, I do it this way because I can do, much like SOHCAHTOA, Sarah, I can do sine law and cosine law in my sleep on a calculator, showing no work. But I recognize a lot of you aren't there. But if you do, you can try it that way. If you get it right, I'm totally good with that. There is going to be cliff at an angle on your test. Find the range. Okay. I think the first thing that I'm going to do is realize I have an angle. Did I say angle? Components. Here's my t-table. I know AX is 0. I know AY is negative 9.8. I know VX, and I know VY initial. How will I find VY? Sine, you say. It's going to be 20 sine 30. Oh, 10. I was going to say this probably works out evenly. Vx is going to be 20 cos 30. 17.32. You know what? There's a 0 right there. That's a good place to round off. I'll go 17.321. Oh, and I guess dy is negative 36. What does this question want me to find, Taryn? Which is dx. Yeah, but you know what I'm going to spend most of my time finding? Time. And in fact, I think I'm going to find time vertically. Oh yeah, this is going to be the full quadratic. D equals VIT plus a half a t squared. Negative 36 equals 10t minus 4.9 t squared. Make it equal to 0. Positive 4.9t. Take away, or t squared. Take away 10t. Take away 36. That equals 0. Now I can go t equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. T equals, well, let's see. That's A. That's B. That's C. Ooh, page B is negative 10. So in my equation, negative 10 is going to be, yeah, are you positive? That's fine. Oh, sorry. Plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared. I'm going to write the negative 10 squared, but because I know the negative is going to vanish when I square it, on my calculator, I'm not going to bother typing the negative because it gets in the way. Minus 4 times A, 4.9, times C, negative 36, all over 9.8. Is this a fraction? Yep, open up a bracket. 10 plus square root, open up a bracket. 10 squared minus 4 times 4.9 times negative 36, close off the square root, close off the top, divided by 9.8. If you didn't write the 9.8, if you have a 2 times 4.9, you have to put the bottom in brackets as well. Do you get as one of your roots 3.91666422? I'll carry all that because this is not my final answer. 3.91666422. Okay, I can do that. T equals 3.91666422. And I think the other one is negative, yes? I'm going to just reject it. Much like, I can't remember what much. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. Taryn, what was I trying to find? It's going to be Vx, which was 17.321. times my answer button from 3.916642. 17.321 times answer button. I get a range of 67.8. Is that right? People nodding? Good. If you got that, I would give you, what's this out of? 7 out of 7. This will probably be worth 7 marks. So there's a lot of steps. If not, I would give you 1 mark if I saw that you had written AX equals 0 and AY equals negative 9.8. I would give you 1 mark for successfully finding the components, the 17.321 and the 10. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. I would give you 1 mark for finding time, whichever way, solver or quadratic formula. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that, 1 mark for the numbers, and 1 mark for the answer. If you got time wrong, because you solved the quadratic equation wrong, I would still give you the full 3 down here if you went 17.321 times your incorrect time value. But not if you put a plus a half AT squared and put a 9.8 in there. Then I'd lovingly freak out. Number 6. This question is way easier because they gave me the range instead of the height. I think you find you don't end up with a full quadratic, which is nice. I still see components because I see an angle. And so, David, it's still going to be a t-table. I still can say AX is 0, AY is negative 9.8. VY initial sine is again going to be 10. VX, well, of course, it's going to be 17.321 because it's the same velocity in theta as the previous question. But now they gave me the range. I can find time horizontally. I can say that time, well, I can say dx equals vxt. What happened to the plus a half at squared? Gone. Time is going to be dx over vx. It's going to be 154 divided by 17.321. It's going to be 154 divided by 17.321. And I get 8.891, blah, blah. I'll write 8.89, but I'll store this on my calculator. Because this isn't what they asked me to find. What did they ask me to find? Oh. Well, I guess dy equals vy initial t plus a half ay t squared, our old friend. It's going to be 10 times 8.89, I'll use my answer button, plus 0.5 times negative 9.8 times 8.89 squared. Again, I'll square my answer button. It's going to be 10 times answer button plus 0.5 times negative 9.8 times answer button squared. Double check for typos, Mr. Dewitt. That looks good. Do you get... Why did I get a negative? Oh, I'm okay with that. You're right. It's saying you're going to end up below from where you started, Captain Obvious, and I did. Is it negative 298? Okay. If you left your answer as negative, I'm okay with that. Technically, height is a scalar, so I would probably report it as 298 meters. But if you said negative, I'm fine with that. If you had that, you would get 7 out of 7. Otherwise, again, I would give you 1 mark if I saw the physics no-brainers. I would give you 1 mark for the components. Give you 1 mark if I saw that. 1 mark for finding time. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. 1 mark for the numbers, and 1 mark for the answer. Can you give yourself a lovely score, please, out of 31? Ooh. Any lawyering with me? Now is the time.